1968, 19-year-old encyclopedia saleswoman Linda Slauson arrived on the doorstep of a family home in Portland, Oregon. She was invited in by a seemingly kind stranger, but she would never leave. While his children played above, the man of the house strangled Linda to death before severing her foot and dumping her body in a nearby river.
And then he put a foot in a freezer and would put shoes on this foot.
The depraved killer was local electrician Jerry Brudos. The 28-year-old appeared to be an upright family man, but he was keeping a dark secret very close to home.
If you can imagine a man who would capture women while his wife and his two small children are in the house, she's making dinner, and he's in the garage torturing a woman.
Brudos killed 4 young women in the cruelest of circumstances before defiling their bodies for his own twisted pleasure.
Brudos is intent on only one thing, his own gratification at its most extreme. And that is one of the things that makes him the most horrifying of killers.
The perverted desires of Jerry Brudos had erupted, turning him into one of the world's most evil killers. In June 1969, Jerry Brudos was given 3 life sentences for murder. Over a 15-month period, he abducted, raped, killed, and desecrated the bodies of 4 young women in Oregon. The 30-year-old could not suppress his unhealthy desire for high-heel shoes. Rod Englert is a crime scene analyst who visited Brudos's infamous kill room and spent time speaking with the sadistic killer.
I talked to him about what went through his mind. What was he thinking about prior to picking up a victim? He would drive for hours at a time, all over looking for what he had in his mind as that perfect victim walking in front of him. Because in his mind, when he saw that, it had to have something. What was it that it had to have? High-heel shoes.
Portland journalist and radio talk show host Lars Larson also interviewed Brudos in prison.
All of these women who were Brudos victims were women that all of us could imagine as wives, mothers, sisters, daughters, and they were simply disappearing like a puff of smoke. And that made it particularly terrifying for the community because they didn't know if the next day it wouldn't be a member of their family who was taken in this way.
Despite being incarcerated for over 35 years, Brudos never showed any remorse for his horrendous crimes.
The big question, Jerry, if you got out today, would you not do it again? And there was a blank stare. He just nodded like that. That's all he did. He would do it again.
There was apparently no conscience. There was apparently no remorse. Yeah, he was the personification of evil.
This killer's story begins in Webster, South Dakota. Jerome Brudos was born on the 31st of January, 1939. The second son of Henry and Eileen, young Jerry had a difficult upbringing.
Eileen, his mother, was a rather solid figure, and she really favoured his elder brother, Larry. I think that was to colour a great deal of Jerry Brudos's childhood. An unaffectionate mother, a fairly remote father. So you've got this sort of runt of a litter concept with Brudos's childhood.
And the family were quite nomadic. They moved around a lot. So Brudos didn't really get the chance to develop those stable peer relationships that are really important to becoming who we are.
It was at a young age that Brudos first discovered the fetish that would define him.
When Brudos was 5, he was just allowed to go and roam about and do what he wanted to do. So he was in a junkyard one day and he came across a pair of quite elaborate, shiny, high-heeled shoes. And he would have been fascinated by them because his mother dressed very conservatively. These weren't the kind of shoes that he would have seen her wearing. So they were something quite intriguing.
And develops, well, one almost called it an excitement about them, and indeed takes them home. His mother is very, very disapproving. And indeed so disapproving she burns them. Now, that is the genesis, in my mind, of what turned Jerry Brudos into a shoe fetishist. That single moment completely altered the trajectory of the rest of his life.
As the family settled in Oregon in the early 1950s, the now teenage Brudos' fascination with women's shoes took a more sinister turn.
So the obsession, which started off with shoes, then expanded to women's underwear. And he would steal women's underwear, and he would wear it, and he would play with it. And I think he starts to experience feelings of comfort and feelings of arousal. So these are things, I think, that are quite kind of confusing for him, but quite intriguing at the same time.
Brudos collected his high heels and underwear, the thefts of them, from clotheslines. Sneaking through neighborhoods. This was a challenge to him. And it's not about the sex, it's about power. What can I get away with?
Brudos' next twisted plan was to photograph a naked girl. Age 17, he lured one of his neighbors into his house and threatened her with a knife.
When she'd taken her clothes off under his orders, he took photographs of her. And I think at this point, he hadn't thought much beyond taking photographs, but he knows that he can control women. He knows he can get them to do what he wants them to do, and this sets a really dangerous precedent.
The girl didn't report Brudos to the police, which only spurred him on further. 8 months later, he escalated the intensity of his attacks.
He persuades a 17-year-old girl to get into his car on the pretext of giving her a lift home. He doesn't give her a lift home. He takes her to a remote spot and beats her, assaults her brutally because she refuses to take off all her clothes for him and let him photograph her.
This is somebody who's been fantasizing about the control that he has over women. This is somebody who's been able to get women to do what he wants before. And now he's got somebody who is not playing ball and he doesn't like it. So this violent reaction, it's not a particularly surprising one to me.
This time, Brudos didn't get away with it. A couple overheard the assault taking place and called the police. In the spring of 1956, instead of facing a prison sentence, Brudos was committed to Oregon State Hospital for psychiatric evaluation.
It's concluded that he's having what might be described as an aberrant adolescence, sexual deviation with fetishism. It's also suggested that there may be an element of schizophrenia in his condition.
It was mentioned at the time that he couldn't be rehabilitated, that he had a sociopathic issue that couldn't be rehabilitated.
But what you have now is the beginnings of a full-scale sexual predator. If you like, the genesis from the cocoon is beginning to emerge.
Brudos spent his days at school and his nights in the hospital. Despite the report suggesting he could not be rehabilitated, the 17-year-old was released after just 9 months in December 1956.
After he left school, Brudos, he did do a short stint in the military, but then he became a commercial electrician and began to do wiring jobs.
By 1963, the 24-year-old was working for a local radio station in Corvallis, Oregon. It was there he met his wife, 17-year-old Darcy.
They begin a relationship, get married, and have the first child. But Brudos hasn't really changed. What he wants Darcy to do is to do all the housework naked, or only wearing underwear, or only wearing a pair of high-heel shoes.
And that is typical of an abusive situation.